Yeah, we're live. Okay. Hang on, guys. Okay. What's up? Okay. What I need to do here is go to. I wanted to give a shout out to the Facebook repair book group, which is led by Kevin Smith. So let me send this over to Kevin. Hopefully Kevin joins us. Hey, James. Let me see if this actually got sent. Yes. Hopefully Kevin can come join us. I don't know if he can, but yeah, Kevin heads up the Facebook chainsaw repair group. So hopefully he can come hang out. But we did have a bit of an interesting discussion, and I came off a bit of a jerk. So I wanted to apologize to Kevin for that. That wasn't really the point. I am a bit of a jerk, but that's, neither here nor there, right? Tim's here. Larry, Jesse showed up. Very nice. Larry, we missed you last night. Yeah, that's pretty sure. That'll do. Okay. That's that 372 that we had the tank vent issue with. And it's running pretty good now. Sicker than a dog. I'm sorry, Larry. I hope you feel better. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that Kevin joins us. Don't know if he will. But there was a very, very relevant discussion, and it also means I got to take the top back off of this 350 to show you guys. But 7 people now. Who else is here? For those that are not watching live, that are going to watch this later, you should join us live. It's a whole lot more fun. Morgan Whirling. Morgan, didn't you buy some tools from me? Like a while ago? I recognize names, but just only in, passing. Am I right? Did I remember that right? Ah, you sent me an email. Okay, you haven't bought yet. Don't worry, we'll convert you sooner rather than later. It's gonna happen. And when you do get around to it, you're gonna be happy you did. That chain's pretty doggone sharp. Don't really need to do much to it. I was thinking, gee, I could just sharpen this up for Dad, but... Did I watch the... No, I didn't get a chance to watch Ken. What's the absolute minimum squish you'd run on a 350? 14? 14, 15, somewhere in there? Yes, James, you can be the moderator. For 9 people. Yeah, you can get away with 17. Yeah. Make sure you measure the 17 in a number of places. So, Larry, why not grind well, it's actually easier to grind the plastic. It's just easier to grind the plastic than it is to grind on the carburetor piece itself. And there's nothing really wrong with grinding the plastic. It's just a plastic case. You're not really, messing up too much. There's Ken. Actually, I was kind of waiting for Ken because this video is about the shout out to the Facebook repair group. And yeah, mainly I shout out to Kevin Smith because Kevin runs the group, and I came off as a bit of a jerk in we had a little exchange, a little interesting debate, and I wanted to kind of go over it with you guys here. And actually, we're going to use Ken here as a sounding board. So we have a pretty good crew here right this minute, so why not go over the issue? So on, you hear a lot of places, they show up a picture of a saw and how much is this saw worth? So, I tend to stick, actually, it'd be nice to have David Shively here too, because David really likes these saws, but the saw in question was basically the John Serid version of a Husky 359, I think. Either a 357 or a 359, I forget. So the John Serid version of that particular saw. And the question had come up, and I think the question was a little more complex than this, but the question had come up, what's it worth? Yeah, the 2159. So so Morgan, you saw that. Okay. So, which I think is basically a 359 for all intents and purposes. Anyway, and so everybody on there, they were asking how much is it worth, and 300, 350, maybe $400, that thing. Assuming it's a runner. And basically, my vote was it was worth about $75. And I seem to be the only dissenting vote. And again, I came off of as a bit of a jerk, but my entire assessment on that came from one simple fact. And Ken, you and I have had this discussion before, so that's why I'm going to use you. But right in here is the intake clamp. There's a metal intake clamp right here. So, I've gone over this numerous times, the issues with Husky 350s. You have the bolts coming loose on the muffler, you have the base that needs to be resealed, and you have the intake clamp that needs to be converted over to a metal intake clamp. Hey, Brandon. So the discussion was, because I was like, yeah, I give $75 for that thing. because it doesn't and the bigger issue was that Kevin had worked on it, and I guess he had gone through it and made sure it was pretty good, check for the carburetor and the rubbers and all that stuff, and make sure that it's good otherwise. um, and Kevin's point was, it's like a $10 part to redo that, and half an hour of labor to change out that clamp. And is that the difference? Is that worth $225 essentially? Because in my opinion, if that clamp had been replaced, it's a $300 saw all day long, no problem. um, so GMAT, where are you getting that $225? Would you charge that much? And the answer is no, I would not charge that much. But let's ask Ken. Let's ask Ken just for the hell of it, because Ken he's like a general small engines guy. Ken, let's assume that clamp is the only thing that needs to get changed out on the saw. Okay, you're going to be putting a new base gasket in when you go in there, but basically there's nothing else that needs to get changed out on the saw. Um, would you charge half an hour of labor for it? Would you charge an hour of labor for it? And then the other question that I would ask would be, let's suppose the customer, and this was the actual case, the customer told you go through the saw and don't change the clamp. Would you still work on the saw? So my point was, me personally, I would not have worked on the saw if I was not allowed to change out that clamp first, or at least that's being the primary issue for me. Again, we have a known issue with the intake clamp. If that thing comes loose, and they do chronically, it wasn't loose, but they're known to come loose. If that thing comes loose, then the saw eats itself. It's a known problem. So, at least in my opinion, until that clamp is changed, you have a part saw, and part saws are worth between 50 and $75. You could certainly give $75 for the same thing, because it's a metal crankcase saw, so it's probably worth that. But I'm not coming off my $75 that it was worth. So, anyway, Ken, what would you charge half an hour of labor to do that? Would you? Hey, Craig. Yeah, Brandon's here. Craig. Who else showed up? Did I miss anybody? I fully realize that I'm not everybody. So I don't really consider myself a small engine mechanic. Um, Ken's a small engine mechanic. I'm not a small engine mechanic. I do wrench on small engines, and I do these chainsaws and stuff, but I don't. I consider myself a dentist. Um, if I'm going to work on a chainsaw, and my buddy Dave is calling me, so I'm gonna. Sorry, Dave. Um, if I'm going to work on a chainsaw, basically I'm either going to have my way and work on it the way that I feel is right, or I'm not going to do it at all. And I understand that there's a lot of guys that that are just not in that position. That can basically say, if the customer wants just to do the carburetor, then just do the carburetor. I don't think that applies to these saws, mainly because you have a known issue. If you're in there, if you're monkeying with it, you are now responsible for the whole thing. If it blows up, because of that clamp issue, how are you going to prove to the customer that you didn't do something else wrong? You know, I don't know. I understand that the customer, Kevin's point was it wasn't his call. That the customer basically said, "Hey, don't fix that." Me personally, if I that's the first thing that I looked at. It was the first thing that I asked. Um, the way that my sense is that my sense is don't work on that saw at all unless he allows you to turn to do that clamp. Tim Freeman, 1 hour labor. Yeah, I think probably 1 hour labor is pretty reasonable. Um, and most shops around here, I don't know what most shops around here would charge, but my guess is somewhere about $100 for an hour. If you can find a small engine shop that'll charge you $50, then that's a pretty darn good deal. So if that's the case, so let's 85, yeah, you know, eat cost to gain some custom 85. So, but let's say you found a guy to do it for $50. Just for argument's sake, let's say somebody was able to find it for $50 and it costs $10 for the clamp. Why not, as the owner of the saw, why not do that and then ask top dollar for the saw? Then go out and ask $400 for the saw. And that was kind of, if that's not done, my opinion, you have a part saw, just the way it is. Charge for 30 minutes and gain a new customer. Yeah, you could. There's all kinds of different ways to slice this, guys. But I think number one for me is, me personally. I wouldn't have worked on the saw without being allowed to change the clamp. Um, all of my customers, when they customers, I don't really have cut. I have tree guys that I know that come, and I have a few guys that are like, hey, you need to do this. When they dump off a saw, they say do it, and there is no price constraint. Um, if they're going to give me a price constraint, I tell them no. That's just the way that I do it. Um, and I realize that is not everybody's situation. Most of what I do, though, is complete teardowns and complete rebuilds. So I can charge a flat rate and just say, okay, here's a flat rate for the labor, and then it's whatever it is on the parts above that, and I hand them the receipts. And most of the guys I deal with don't even want the receipts. They don't even care. Yeah, man. As the frame oil says, baby now, baby later. I know. Barry Reynolds, Edwin, how's it going, guys? See, guys, you're gonna forgive me. I get Barry Reynolds and Brandon Viles mixed up. I'm sorry, guys. Forgive me. Between the two of you, I have I have issues. Um, but you're right. Reputation is everything. So in order for me to, this is my dad's 350 again. I was just, uh, no, that most of the are here the homeowner, but loggers have no issues paying take that make the money. Right. So when you have the pros that come in, they don't have a problem throwing the money at you because they need their saw fixed. And usually when I take in the saw, I'll be like, yeah, that's not worth it. Heave ho it. Or, I can look at it pretty quick and be like, even if I have to tear this down and bring it back, you're still ahead. Also, keep in mind, I come at things with a very specific viewpoint. I don't necessarily have to make money on these chainsaws. I'm not making my living on the saws. So, what I charge people for things is, not necessarily um, designed to make my living. So I have a very unique perspective on things. I'm very opinionated, just the way that it is, and I don't mean to be a jerk to Kevin. That wasn't the idea. Um, but I wanted to express at least an opinion that when you don't have that intake clamp on there, as far as I'm concerned, you have a part saw. If it doesn't have a metal intake clamp, you have to pop the head to get that metal intake clamp on. I mean, there might be people that might be able to get it, but no. You have to pop the head to get that darn intake clamp on. And Harry Homeowner isn't going to do it. And even a lot of the tree guys aren't going to do it. So you're going to have a shop do it. So it means you have to bring it to a shop, have it diagnosed, have them do it. You're going to spend, I think, at a shop, at a Husky dealer, I'll bet you'd spend $100 or more just getting that darn thing installed. And for most people, that's not worth it. In which case, you have a part saw. My opinion, just the way I look at it. Homeowners use saws once or twice a year with old gas. Yeah. You'd think that they'd learn and just buy the canned gas, you know? Right, if the dealer wants to bother with that sort of stuff. I think the biggest difference heavy cutters and homeowners, the homeowners types don't understand how finicky the saws can be. That's true. See, but even Morgan, even the tree guys just expect their saws to cut, and it's just they don't go and tighten anything. If a bolt falls off, then they just hand me the saw and be like, "Here, fix it." They're like, what? You don't do bolt checks in the morning. Go out and just check a couple of bolts here or there, make sure it's good. They don't do that. They don't even do that. Right, plastic intake clamp is a death sentence. It's a known issue. It's a known issue. So I shop 75 an hour for labor, which it's not bad. 75 an hour is probably pretty good. I'm way too cheap per hour, but it's at my leisure. Most homeowners let their chainsaws sit way too long. Yep. I have a local John's Food dealer sends me their rebuilds because they only do warranties. They don't rebuild. Yeah, none of the shops around here do rebuilds really either. I've been in and I've asked. So, am I cuckoo, guys? Would you rebuilds have very low margins? They have super low margins for me. Yes, I know, Larry. He loves rebuild. So, do you guys agree? You think that a saw with a clamp like that is considered a part saw? I do. Um, or you can call me a jerk, and Matt, stop being a jerk and do the math, and where do you get the differential between $75 for the part saw and a $300 saw? Just $225 for all for an intake clamp. I paid $20 for 359 for because of the plastic intake clamp. Yeah, $75 might even be generous. Good job, Larry. It's good. Right. Right. Now, knowledge is important. Knowledge is very important, Ken. Just knowing that that's an issue is worth something. A lot of the dealers around here don't know that that's an issue. I would argue 50% of a running, clean, used saw. If I had a lot of spare time else, $50. So I think that 21 to 59 was probably worth at least $300, assuming it was running okay, and had that clamp changed. You know, if you have that saw after a rebuild, new bearings, new seals, maybe a new air filter, um, carburetor's been kitted, nice plastics on it, then you could probably see $400 on that as far as what you could command for it. That would probably be a reasonable number. Ported would be even more, obviously. So yeah, again, this was on the Facebook Chainsaw Repair group, and Kevin Smith runs it. I think it's a good group. I don't really do a lot of participating there, but I'm definitely on there, and eventually come on and make a comment every once in a while, and basically the reason the reason for this whole live stream was because I wanted to discuss the clamp a bit because I think it's a relevant discussion, but I did come off as a bit of a jerk with Kevin today, and I didn't want to, I don't want to be that guy. Um, but I did want to defend the position essentially of I think that it's a part saw, and I wouldn't have worked on it. Disclaimer or not, I wouldn't have worked on it if the customer wouldn't allow me to change that clamp, because that's immediately where my brain goes is change that damn thing. It's in the shop. Change the clamp. Um, that's certainly one thing. Two, without that clamp being changed, you have a part saw. Because it's a professional grade saw, a metal crankcase, you could certainly argue maybe up to $75 is what it's worth. Yeah, different plastics. I don't know. Does it have a different air intake too, or a different air filter? It might. Another good point, Larry. If you're in there and you're charging an appropriate amount for labor, pop the head anyway. It's not like it takes you that long to do it. Pop the head, put the $10 part on there, and then that's a pretty cheap cover your butt kind of thing. Whether the customer says it's okay or not, maybe you just do it. Be like, never mind. I'll just give you that for free because it's kind of a cover your butt kind of thing. One question: how come none of my saw guys showed up to my live stream? I was sorry. I was. I've been busy. I'm sorry, Ken. Did you have a good time? What'd you do? Brian Brady's here. Evening, Brian. You've missed all the fun. I forgot to do buffering problem. Oh, you had buffering problem. You know what I forgot to do? A compression test. Let's do a compression test. This was having idling issues, and I want to make sure that it's not a problem here. that's going to be fine. But we'll check anyway. I had to wear my waders to watch Ken. That's like 155 with the decomp in. How about 200? Oh. Well, we're not losing compression on this thing, so not too worried about that. So I'll get it out for a test one of these days. You want to look at, let's see, the valves here, Ken. Check the old comparison charts I got from a J-Red dealership. Basically the same air baffle. Okay. Yeah, you know, the guy that knows all that is Bob, Spike 60. So I'm not privy to the differentials. For me, you know, John Surratt, if you like the straight bar, then you get the John Surratt. You like the angle here, then you get the Husky. You know, they're effectively the same thing otherwise. This one, I seem to think that actually it reads pretty good. My sense is overall that it really does read pretty good. Take care, Jesse. Oh, I got an email here about a toolkit. Let's see. A guy named Tom. Let me see if he can come live here. John Riley just uploaded a video of a solo. That's pretty cool. I think I sold a toolkit. That's pretty cool. Let's go back over here to you guys. Go live. Okay, good. Okay. What was it? The Facebook page is, I believe it's Chainsaw Repair Group, is what it's called. And Kevin Smith is the moderator, the main moderator. The straight is a little nicer on the 455 460, mainly because of how heavy the saw is relative to power output. Useless now for the Rip Johnson. Yeah. Dealer said eventually it's going to be replaced by orange saws. I thought I heard the new red saws are actually going to be Red Max for whatever reason. Yeah, it's quite the group, Ken. Do you know where you could buy a Husky 181? Uh, no. Um, Offhand, no. You got to keep an eye out for those things when they pop up on either Arborist site in the Trading Post or OPE forum in the Trading Post. You could put out a wanted to buy and see what you come up with. That's a lot of power in a small package there. Essentially, you get a 181, just put a 288 top end on it, you got a 288. You know, you seem to have a way to piss off people, Matt. Yeah, I know, Tim. I could be a little abrasive. That wasn't the objective. I was literally in the dental office, and I was like, I was seeing, I was seeing what was going on, and I'm like, everybody says that these things are worth gold. Why has nobody mentioned that freaking clamp yet? And David Shively hasn't come by yet, but he's just he's been complaining to me about he keeps seeing like the Husky 359s, and people want a pile of gold for these things. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, the whole point here was to give a shout out to Kevin, and I do enjoy the chainsaw repair group on Facebook. I do frequent there. I don't post that often, but didn't want to be a jerk. That wasn't the idea. Yeah, a lot of people love them. They love the 359s. Me personally, I don't necessarily need to have one. Um, I've run them. Think they're a fine saw, but I don't personally need it. It's the problem though when you form an opinion on something, and I don't know. I have a unique perspective. It's my perspective. My unique perspective starts with working with nearly just trash chainsaws. That's what I do. That's what I've done traditionally. Um, and B, when I put them back together, I'm not doing it for a living, so I don't necessarily need to turn a buck. You know, even if I'm charging labor, it's not like I can't charge. I literally can't charge enough. Like most other repair guys, it's just not possible to charge what your time is actually worth on these because it's just not worth that much to put these back together. So, but how do I put this? I just, I'm not trying to lose money on the deal either, you know? But people that do this to make a buck have a very different perspective, I think. And it's just not me. And there are plenty of guys that, you know, are probably out there flipping chainsaws. I don't have good luck with that, you know? Hey, Dan, welcome. You missed all the fun, Dan. Morgan, by the way, what's your opinion on running narrow curve on Husky 350s? My old man got it set up with a 20-inch narrow curve, and without a hot saw, you would probably need square grind to outcut the narrow curve on these saws. Hang on. Am I buffering here? No, we're good. Okay. So, sorry, I was buffering over here. Anyway, um, you know, I still like it. I'm not cant racing. I do cant race, but at least some with these things. But I'm not doing that. I'm literally just going out with dad and cutting up a red oak, you know, type of thing. And my preference for barn and chain setup on this is the 16 inch 66 drive link 325 050 setup. I don't think that qualifies as narrow curve. It's the 32. It's just 325. Um, when I was at the get together, not at Lee's, Sonder had I think it was a Dolmar 5105, and he had a square ground set up on it that might have been narrow curve. It was like square ground, narrow curve, or something like that. It was really speedy. That thing, that was really speedy. He's like, yeah, it's really nothing special either. Just square ground and, you know, whatever the chain combo he was having. It was really, really speedy. So I know that you can get better than what I have, but for the size, the weight, all that stuff, I like a 16-inch bar with the 350s. If I need a bigger bar, I'm grabbing a different saw in general. Can you run it? Sure, you can. The 350s have the same oiler as the 455 Ranchers, which run 20-inch bars. So there's nothing to say that you can't run a 20 on something like this. It feels awkward to me. 'I was going for the narrower cut. He has 20 on it for less bending down. I'm not really Morgan. I'm just not that into the different combos. I'm not because I found a chain combo that works for me. I'm invested in that because I've got all my bars and everything set up for that. So I'm not the type of guy that really fiddles around with different bar and chain combos. So forgive me for not having a useful opinion on that. 16 and 325 on all 50 cc and under. Yeah, and Dan, you kind of bring up another interesting point. Like, is it worth it to have a 40 cc saw as opposed to a 50 cc saw? So I personally think that the 350 is the smallest saw that is kind of reasonable to run. Like if you're running a rear handle chainsaw, you don't really need to go any smaller. What's the point? This is plenty light, plenty compact, and a lot of power. Very small package. Um, it's just kind of how I think. Top handles are different. Okay, so you get into 200Ts, and I know my buddy Joe he actually has a 200T rear handle, and he loves that thing. Just loves it. I really like that tiny 150, the steel 150, and I think the Echo that's as similar in size is probably pretty going to be a pretty sweet saw too. I don't have one, but it might be fun to pick one of those things up. But if I'm going to run a small rear handle saw, the 350 is going to be the smallest that I would run. It just, if you're limbing, if you're taking this out to the woods, this would definitely be the smallest I'd run. So that's about all I had tonight, guys. Hopefully tomorrow night hopefully, I don't know for sure, but Eric Briggs I think has sent me a package, so we may get to fiddle with something tomorrow night, which would be fun. Anywho, what else? Brandon, you wish to still makes all the parts for the 200T. Take care. Good night, Larry. I hope you feel better, buddy. Yeah, Brandon, the steel still makes all the parts for the 200T, and nearly all the parts are available aftermarket. For better or for worse. So there's really, you know, nothing wrong with you going and buying a bunch of OEM parts and putting a 200T together yourself. Why not? You can follow my videos to do it. And Brandon, if you haven't tried the Steel 150, the really tiny one, if you haven't tried it, you need to play with that little thing. If you are doing the small stuff, pruning, my dad prunes apple trees with it. That is a nice little piece. It really is. If you haven't tried it, you should try it. I have a Steel 250. I'm going to put on a 24 bar Derek Herb old man saw. Tim, my father-in-law has a 250. I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan. Enjoy your meds, James. Take care. The Steel 150, I think, is like 25 cc's. It's small. It's only like 5 pounds. It's really small. Well, there's no question the 200T is a legendary saw. I mean, but they're pretty easy to put together. You can, I know people think they're gold, but you can pick those up used. So yeah, so that's about all I have tonight. I think we'll call it. It's getting late anyway. What would I give for a 200T? It depends. Rebuilt. Lone Wolf sells them on Arborist site. If you go to the Trading Post, Lone Wolf has fully rebuilt ones, and he does a nice job. So Colic Power Mac 6.8 pounds. It's pretty light. Just not be a slug. But it's a narrow kerf bar. You know, 200 Ts can bring $400 or $500. You know, in rebuilt shape. If it's super nice, 600 or 700. And you have new old stock ones. If you can find a new old stock 200T, you're probably looking in the 1,200 to maybe even $2,000 range for those things. Best of luck. I think all the parts, if you buy all the OEM parts for a 200T from Steel, I think it's like $1,800 or something silly. So if you got a part saw, again, part saw, 50 maybe $75 for part saws. So I'll call it a night. Again, shout out to Kevin and the Chainsaw Repair Group over at Facebook. I didn't want to come off as a jerk. That wasn't the idea. Everybody, you guys take care and have a great night. And Ken, hopefully we'll see you on your live stream one of these days. All right, take care, guys.